All right, welcome back to Logic. I'm Tom, and this week we are going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to kind of pause on the textbook, and we will be starting our persuasive paper. And the first part will be an outline, which I will discuss. But the unit really has to do with kind of a method by which we can kind of start this process. Now, I am going to talk about a particular kind of ancient skepticism called Equipollence skepticism. So, to begin, skepticism is generally the position of, you know, not the position that either we don't have knowledge about something or we don't have knowledge at all. It's some kind of anti-knowledge position. Generally, when we say you're skeptical about something, it's you're not sure, right? In a more technical fashion, this is the idea that you're going to withhold assent from believing that something is true, right? That's the general idea of skepticism. And there's lots of different varieties of skepticism. There's lots of different degrees of skepticism. And then there's also lots of different views about what it is to be a skeptic, right? And what when we're talking about equipollent skepticism, we're talking about a kind of ancient skepticism. Now, ancient skeptics are interesting in that they're not academic in their orientation, right? They don't just sit around and say, oh, I don't believe this or whatever. Ancient skepticism was really more of a religion almost, or at least what we would think of as a religion. Ancient skeptics thought that, not believing things, not thinking that you have knowledge was important for your personal being in the world, right? That there were all kinds of problems with people who thought they knew what was true and what was right, and that actually they needed to prevent themselves from thinking that they knew stuff, right? So it was very much a principled position, right? And equipollent skepticism is one version of, there was lots of different schools of ancient skepticism, and they would really function more like kind of a religion. They would hang out together and they would talk about their methods and all this kind of stuff, and they would practice them, and they really found it to be a way of life. And equipollent skepticism really means equal poles, right? It actually it has to do with equaling out different views. And the idea behind equipollent skepticism was that given any claim, you can argue its opposite with equal right, or with equal amount of kind of compelling argument, right? And so this might sound kind of weird, but because lots of things you're like, well, obviously I'm talking on a video right now. That's pretty immediate, pretty true. However, what if I were dreaming right now? There are lots of times where I've had dreams where I thought it was real, but it wasn't, right? What if I were in the Matrix or something like this? I mean, you can concoct a story that would really kind of undercut that belief. Also, think about a belief that we commonly think is obviously true, things like the earth is round. Well, how do you know exactly? Because you saw pictures. How many have you been to space? And if you were in space, like, how would you be able to really infer that the earth is round exactly, right? You could be tricked, right? There are different ways to start to argue the opposite of what you think is obviously true, right? And the important point of equipollent skepticism is not to take up absurd positions, but it is to prevent that assent, right? Prevent you from thinking that you're absolutely sure about what you think you know, right? And the idea is that when you kind of are able to stave off that sense of kind of like feeling like you're right, then you get this kind of what they call a feeling of tranquility. I think it is the Greek term is ataraxia, I believe. And it is this sense of tranquility that you are not kind of driven to think that you know what is right, right? And so they believed that that was really important to get to that place. And that's how you really kind of found some kind of genuine inner peace. Um, so the reason why I'm talking about it this week, and definitely look at the handout, it has some more kind of thorough formulations of all these things I'm talking about, is not to just take up crazy positions, but to start to look at both sides of an important argument, right? And so for this persuasive paper, you'll be looking at, you'll be coming up with a topic, and you'll pick a topic, and then you want to write down specifically what the issue is, and then you want to kind of engage in some equipollence skepticism and give, 3 reasons that are kind of pro the position and 3 reasons that are against that position, right? So let me go ahead and pull this up, take a look at it. So what you want to do is think of an important issue, and then try not to assume that you know the right position to have on that issue, right? And this is supposed to be a method to help you do that, right? So think about, something like the abortion debate, right? You have like pro-choice or pro-life, and what you don't want to do is, because this is a logic class, it is about critical thinking. You do not want to say, oh, well, some people think that abortion is murder, but that's obviously wrong because those people are stupid, right? That doesn't help anybody, right? You're just assuming that you know the truth and then just, reaffirming your position. So what you want to do here is try to, with your 3 points on each side, you want to make the most compelling case for each side. And this should really be a learning experience. You really should, if you pick a topic that you feel very passionately about, you really need to kind of like table that passion for a minute to really consider the opposing position, right? And really that will bring you to a place, I think, that even if you're not supposed to necessarily change your mind, but it should give you some pause to question why you think what you think and what counts as good justification for what you think, right? How would you respond to someone who had a really compelling argument on the other side, right? And so I have an outline of exactly what I'm kind of looking for in this outline. The more work you put into the outline, the easier the other steps are going to be in the persuasive paper, because we're going to take this and move forward with making a draft in a few weeks, and then move forward with that again, and you'll get some feedback, more feedback, and do more of a final draft. But use this kind of equipollence idea, watch the other video, and really try to come up with as strong and compelling an argument for both sides, right? And just do that at this point, kind of take up the position of withholding assent, right? Just kind of bracket your position for a second and kind of hold it apart from what you're doing, and just try to break things down and try to understand the opposing position as much as possible. And that's all you're doing in this first part. And then after that, that'll put you in a really good position to move forward with this paper. And hopefully, you'll really get something out of it. This should be a very good exercise in critical thinking and application of the logical principles. As we learn more technical kind of logical principles, it should aid your argumentation and aid your analysis of the different positions. And one last thing I will say before I go is that a lot of popular debates, important issues that students are apt to take up for this assignment rely a lot on statistics and observational facts, all these kinds of things. And this is why we skipped ahead to do the stuff on induction before doing this. So we have a sense of what kind of the general principles of what counts as adequate sample size, unbiased statistics, all these kinds of things. We have those kind of principles and use those to kind of weed out some problematic, statistics or observations or studies that you might come across, right? You really want the best kind of material that you can get to start out with. And then you will start to kind of analyze it more thoroughly as we move forward. So that's it for today. I'll see you next time.